All right, let's talk about making AI smarter. What if I told you the next big leap forward isn't about building a bigger brain, but about teaching the AI we already have to think in a totally new way? We're going to dive into a pretty cool idea that reframes how we ask AI for answers, turning it from a solo performer into a full-blown orchestra.
You've definitely been there, right? You ask a super powerful AI like GPT-4 what you think is a straightforward question, and it comes back with something, well, something that's just confidently wrong. It happens to everyone, and it's a huge puzzle in the world of AI.
Because here's the thing, these models are brilliant, they're absolute powerhouses, but they are not perfect. They can and do make mistakes. Sometimes they get stuck on one bad idea early on and just keep digging that hole deeper and deeper. And that's exactly the problem that a new approach is trying to solve.
So, how do you fix it? Well, a team of researchers from Stanford and OpenAI came up with this really elegant solution in a paper on what they call meta-prompting. And honestly, it's a creative game changer.
Instead of thinking of the AI as a single musician trying to play the violin, the drums, and the tuba all at once, they asked, what if we could teach it to be the conductor? What if its job wasn't to play every note, but to lead an entire orchestra of experts to create something amazing together?
And that is the heart of meta-prompting. It's a technique where you give the AI just one high-level prompt, but that prompt tells it to act as a manager or a conductor. Its job is to take a big, messy problem, break it down, and then assign all the little pieces to other independent versions of itself, each acting like an expert on one specific thing.
Okay, that sounds really cool in theory, but how does this AI conductor actually lead its team? Let's get into the mechanics of how this whole orchestra comes together. It all happens in 4 main steps. First, the conductor AI looks at the user's request and breaks it down into smaller, logical subtasks. Then it writes specific instructions for each of those tasks and assigns them to different expert AIs. After that, it acts as a go-between, letting the experts share their results and build on each other's work. And finally, it takes all the pieces and assembles a final, verified answer.
So you see the difference in roles here. The conductor, the meta model, has that bird's-eye view. It's the strategist. But the musicians, the expert models, they're hyper-focused. They're all just instances of the same AI, but each one only gets to see its one little instruction. It doesn't know about the bigger picture, it just knows its one job, and it does it really, really well.
This visual really says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the soloist, an AI trying to be a jack of all trades. On the other, you have the conductor, who isn't doing the work, but directing the specialists. And that simple shift from doing to directing is what leads to a much richer, more accurate result.
And this is maybe the most brilliant part of the whole thing. Each expert that gets called up is a totally fresh, independent instance of the AI. It hasn't seen the previous work, so it isn't biased. It brings fresh eyes to the problem, which is absolutely crucial for catching errors. It stops the AI from getting stuck on an early mistake, which is a super common problem with other methods.
Okay, so the theory is sound. It makes a lot of sense. But does it actually work better in practice? Let's look at the data and see what happened when they put this orchestra to the test.
This chart from the paper tells you everything you need to know. On the left, you've got your typical prompting methods. Standard and expert prompting are both hovering around a 55% success rate on these hard problems. Not bad. But then, look all the way to the right. That's meta-prompting. It's hitting nearly 73%. That's not just a little bit better, that is a massive jump in performance, just by changing the process of how the AI thinks. So if you average it out across all the different tasks they tested, what's the bottom line? It's this number, 17.1%.
That's the average boost in accuracy you get with meta-prompting compared to the old way of doing things. And let me say that again. This is without changing the underlying AI model one bit. It's the same AI. The only thing that changed was a smarter way of asking the question. That's huge. And on some tasks, the results were just wild. For the game of 24, which is a really tough math puzzle, meta-prompting was 64% better. It also crushed it in strategic thinking, like finding a checkmate in one in chess. And it even shined in creative writing, like composing a proper Shakespearean sonnet. It just shows how flexible this method is.
So, what's the big takeaway here?
Let's zoom out and look at what the researchers concluded and what this orchestra approach could mean for the future of AI.
I love this quote from the paper's conclusion because it's so forward-looking. The authors are basically saying, hey, this is a cool trick now, but just wait. As the AI models themselves get even more powerful and cheaper to use, this method of using them as a team is only going to become more effective. It opens up a ton of exciting possibilities.
So let's just quickly recap. The big idea here is that meta-prompting turns one single AI into a whole team of specialists. This helps it solve problems more reliably, and that fresh eyes approach helps it catch its own mistakes. But what's really powerful is that you don't need to retrain the AI for every new problem. It's a flexible framework that just works, and it's only going to get better from here.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? If an AI can already learn to conduct an orchestra of itself to solve these kinds of problems, what's the next symphony it's going to learn? What are the really complex, world-changing problems we could tackle with this kind of collaborative AI thinking?
So there you have it. If you want more explainers that just vibe and that definitely aren't written by an AI that's having a bad day, make sure you subscribe to VibeDoc. Thanks for tuning in.